Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lush Gardener. I hope you guys are fine and are safe. In today's video we are talking about yet another interesting variety of succulent called as Echeveria Pullox. Now guys, this is an extremely beautiful succulent, but what I would say is it is like a forever thirsty succulent. Now because of my current situation, concrete pots, very gritty soil, you can see the condition of my Pullox is not very good. But I've noticed that the new growth is much more better than the older leaves. The older leaves are always shriveled up like this. They're always wrinkly like this even after watering it. I had just watered it like 2 days back, but still it is not recovering much. The reason is this succulent is a very thirsty succulent. It has very thin wafer like leaves. They do not store a lot of water, so they are frequently in need of water and usually very thirsty. Now, I had kept this in morning direct sunlight. Probably that is another reason why they are getting dehydrated much faster, and summer is almost over here. So I'm going to be moving these to a place where it is very bright, but it tends to receive indirect bright light. So I'm going to move these succulents there and see what's going to happen next. I even made 2 different soil mixes. This was a very gritty soil mix, and then I made another soil mix which has more of soil. Let's say if this one has around 20% of regular garden soil, then this one has around 40% of regular garden soil. I just wanted to experiment and see it, but I think it did not make much of a difference because you can see both of them are pretty much the same. Doesn't look like there is any difference in the soil mix. I water it whenever the soil is completely bone dry, but I think it needs a little bit more watering. But again, I'm not very sure. I do not want to go ahead and do an overwatering because I can see the new growth is looking much more fresh compared to the older leaves. So I'm also going to repot it once again because I think it's getting a little congested in this spot. Because when I had initially put it into spot, it wasn't so big. It was slightly smaller, but now it has started to shift towards the edge of the pot, as you can see. So I'm going to do a repotting. I will also do a checking of the roots as well. I think I probably might as well do it right away. So I'm going to slowly take it out from the soil. And I can see that the roots are pretty much healthy. A lot of new roots, as you can see, a lot of good growth. Let me check the soil as well. Okay, the soil is completely dry, and I think that is the reason why it's getting quite. But I also feel another reason could be because as you can see, the older roots were not that much, whereas the new roots have just started to come up. Probably that is one of the reason as well. It is slightly dehydrated. As you can see, the new roots are just coming up because you can make out the older roots were not that healthy. Probably when I was away from home, the older roots did not make it through. So I can see a lot of new growth on the roots. So probably in another few weeks, the succulent will start to revive back. But any which ways, I'm going to move it to a slightly wider pot because I feel this pot is turning out to be a little small for this guy because it tends to grow really huge. So I might as well move it to a slightly wider pot. Now the depth of that pot is also very short. It's like around 4 inches, but it has a good width. So there is a good amount of growing place. Because this kind of a succulent will grow like really huge, almost the size of my hand. Once it becomes mature, it is going to turn really huge. So I'm going to move it into that. Now I'm not sure if I want to do it right now because the soil is very less. That pot is very wide, so it's going to require a little bit more of soil. But we can definitely try. You know the hack that I tend to do, add a little bit of pebbles at the bottom and then you can increase the volume of the soil. So currently I'm pretty happy that at least there are a lot of new roots, which means that eventually the succulent will start to open up, because what I can see is these were the older roots with the stem, and the older roots, they did not have much roots that time. That's the reason why it was looking very weak, but now there are a lot of new roots. So probably in another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or maybe 4 weeks, the succulent will start to open up. I will definitely keep you guys updated about it. But currently this is how the situation is. I wouldn't say it's in a bad condition. It is doing quite well. There is a lot of new growth which is doing quite well. There is a bloom stalk as well, which means that the succulent is not in a pretty bad condition, because if it was not doing quite well, it wouldn't have put out a bloom, which means that it is doing quite well. So talking about the care requirements, it prefers a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. Now the reason why I'm moving it into indirect bright light is because it is quite dehydrated. So until it starts to get hydrated and once it opens up the leaves, then I will start slowly introducing it to morning direct sunlight. Right now for me, the major concern is that the succulent should get out of its dehydration and start getting hydrated, which is not possible if the succulent is going to be in morning direct sunlight. So I'm going to do that. The care requirements are pretty simple. The soil has to be loose, porous and well draining. As you've seen, the roots do very well in a very porous and loose soil. The roots get enough space to grow. Talking about watering, it's a slightly thirsty succulent, so it would require watering a little bit more frequently compared to other succulents, but that does not mean that you're going to overwater it. Remember, there is not much storage in the leaves. The leaves are very thin, as you can see over here. Let me show it to you. You can see the size of the leaves are very thin. They cannot store a lot of water, which means if you're going to overwater it, it will get rotted. If you're going to keep it underwatered for a really long time, it will get a dry rot because there is not much space to have that water in their leaves. So basically, for this succulent, you need to have a proper watering schedule. Whenever the soil tends to dry completely, bone dry, go ahead and do a complete watering. Keep an eye. If you're scared about overwatering it, you can always see it gives you a very visible sign that it requires water by having wrinkles on the leaves and starting to close the leaves inwards. It indicates that it needs a little bit more of water. Now, mealybugs are not much of an issue. I haven't seen any mealybugs on this succulent. Aphids can be a problem if there are blooms. Mealybugs can be a problem if there are blooms. So if you're not interested in the blooms, just give it a cut. It belongs to the variety of Echeveria, so it tends to go dormant during the winters and summer is its growing period. So I think this is the right time to repot this because very soon it's going to get into its growing period and I'm sure it's going to grow really huge. So as of now, I'm not going to repot this guy. I'm going to let it be in the soil as it is because I think when I took out this succulent out, I could see that there were a good amount of roots, which means that even this one also would have put out roots because the growth on the crown area looks very similar, which means that they are just putting out the new roots. It's going to take a while for them to open up and start absorbing that water. So I'm just going to repot this one and I'm going to leave it as it is. So in case I don't see any signs of improvement, then I can go ahead and repot it. But as of now, the new growth on the crown looks absolutely fine. So talking about dormancy, as I said, it goes dormant during the winters. Summer is its growing period. So for propagation, you can do a leaf propagation. You can separate the offsets once they reach a decent size. Stem cutting is not possible because these are very compact, tight rosettes, very close to the ground. So stem is not much visible. Unless the succulent is starting to get stretched, then you might have a possible stem to cut it off. Beheading is possible. So these are the few ways that you can multiply this particular succulent. Leaf propagation is also pretty simple. Now as it's getting into its growing period, leaf propagation should not be an issue with Echeveria. So this is pretty much it. Give it a good amount of morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. Once after acclimating it, the soil has to be loose, porous and well draining. Water only when the soil is completely bone dry. So guys, I've gone ahead and repotted it in a slightly wider pot because I'm sure in another 6 months to 9 months of time, the entire succulent is going to cover up the white spot that is there in this spot. I'm pretty sure because that's how huge these things tend to grow. So I have repotted it. It is the same soil mix that I have used from this pot. I haven't changed the soil mix. I have used the same soil mix. Now, as usual, we have just repotted the succulent. Even though there are no cuts on the succulent, I will still not go ahead and water it. I will wait. Even though it's dehydrated, I'll wait for at least 2 to 3 days before I go ahead and water it. It's not so dehydrated that it's going to die off immediately. But if I'm going to water it and if there is some issue with the succulent getting adjusted to the new soil, it might get or it might have issues. So to be on the safer side, I'll wait for another 2 to 3 days and then do a complete watering. That is until the water starts passing through the drain hole. As of now, I'm not adding any more succulents in this. Probably I can add some small little pups or some ground cover, but I do not want to add right now anything. So this is right now like an experiment to me to check when will the succulent start to open up because the new roots are already present. So right now I'm not going to put anything in this. I'm not going to put any decor. I'm not going to put any other succulents. Probably later on, once the succulent starts to open up, I might just add a little bit of ground cover sedums so that it can look a little bit presentable. But again, I'm not very sure. I think I would just leave it as it is. I just want it to grow. It's an absolutely beautiful succulent and I do not want to give it any trouble, and I do not want her to share the pot with any other succulent. Whereas this one, I'm just going to leave it as it is. Probably in another few weeks time, if the new roots are present, it will start to open up. This is the reason why it's always better to check the roots. At times the succulents do not open up even after watering it, because at times there is some issue with the roots, or if there is a root rot, or if the roots have dried up, it takes a very long time for the succulent to open up. But if the roots are present, if the roots are healthy, and if you water it, and if the succulent was only going through a dehydration, the succulent leaves will open up within 24 to 48 hours. But if there is an issue with the roots, it will not open up even after doing multiple waterings. So that's the reason why if your succulent stays dehydrated or closed for a very long time, even after watering, it's always better to uproot the succulent and check the roots. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep propagating.